Speaker right here, and you can adjust wherever you want, up and down.
Okay.
And then clerks might, you're doing a presentation, right? So, yeah, I think it's going up right now. So then you can advance the slides here.
Okay.
Like, I usually just use the forward and backwards. Yep.
That's it.
That's pretty simple.
Do I turn on off? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. We're starting again after our in-camera section, and I'd like to start with our territorial acknowledgement. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I'll just take a moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all of our decisions. I'll ask again if there's any disclosure or pecuniary interest on our agenda going forward. Seeing none, we have our business plan presentations as we continue to advance our budget conversations, and our first business plan is the Waterloo Public Library. Welcome, Kelly Kiffer, the new CEO of the Waterloo Public Library, and I just wanted to acknowledge she has some folks with her, Karen Cian's current sitting chair, moving on to other things. And Laura Dick is also here as the, I'm going to get this wrong, second in command. How's that?
The Deputy CEO.
Okay. So, so I think council will receive our business plan presentation and hold our questions till the end. And so Kelly, it's over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. It's my
Sorry,
pleasure.
can you just get closer to the microphone, or you can raise the podium if you'd like, but maybe it's just my hearing, but
Better?
yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. It's my pleasure to be here today to tell you about the plans for Waterloo Public Library for 2023. While we are a separate organization from the City of Waterloo, we're closely connected in many ways and are aligned in many strategic goal areas. Most importantly, we share a vision for making Waterloo an equitable community that leads the world in learning, discovery, and caring. The vision for WPL is that we're a transformational force in the development of Waterloo and its people. For us, that means keeping on top of what it means to develop multiple literacy skills, not only traditional literacies like reading and writing, but also digital literacies, environmental literacies, and cultural literacies. It means providing equity of access to tools, resources, and spaces, and opportunities to grow and develop along the lifespan. This means working to advance the opportunities for all people to develop these skills through their library, regardless of age, background, financial situation, ability, or any other factor. To ensure we're a safe and welcoming space for everyone, we work with a wide network of partners who deliver services on site, provide consultation and input to us, and help to amplify and extend our work across the region. A vision and its plan must be accompanied by an awareness that we don't have all the answers and there's always room for us to improve. For us to achieve our vision and mission, we prioritize continuous feedback and engagement with the community. You'll see that as a central feature of the business plan I'm sharing today. One of the more substantial capital investments the City of Waterloo has made in recent years has been the construction of the new Eastside Branch Library at the Manulife Sports Complex site. The addition of the library to a well-used, multi-use facility speaks to a modern understanding of whole person well-being and provides a variety of resources for community members in one spot. While physical construction of a library has an end date, the act of building a library never stops. In designing the spaces and services at Eastside, we thought about the practical implementation of this idea and left some spaces and services to be completed after opening, building these assets out in consult with the community. Our nature space, an outdoor learning area attached to the library, connects the library proper to the trails and natural areas surrounding that location. During pre-build consultation, we heard from the community that the natural landscape around that building was important to them. They were interested in outdoor learning and valued time spent in nature. We opened Eastside with the nature space as somewhat of a blank canvas, knowing environmental literacy was going to be important to the work that we did, but leaving opportunity for the community to shape and evolve how. Our makerspace is a similar concept. Many new libraries open with fully planned and stocked makerspaces on day one. It was our vision to design and leave this project unfinished and co-create what's available, how it's used, and how it grows in consultation with the community. As part of our Eastside Build work, we were able to solicit donations and have reserved funds from those collected for this project, and library collections funds from the capital budget will also support some of the items that will become available for lending through this community-engaged makerspace. As I mentioned, engagement with our users is a key theme of our work this year, and another big action for us is a multi-part project to look at and revitalize our customer service experience. After growing to a 4-site library system in 2022, there's a natural opportunity for us to evaluate what a consistent, equitable, excellent experience would be for customers across our whole system. Last week, we began work with students in the MBA program at Wilfrid Laurier University that will see them investing 1,200 consultation hours into several projects with us, the largest of which will be helping us to understand how customers currently experience the library and making recommendations for how we can improve. As part of what we learn from this process, we will make updates to furniture and fixtures at all of our locations, particularly at Main, to improve the customer service experience of that space. Critical to this work will be to replace the service counters throughout the main library, refreshing them and aligning them with a new unified approach to service. We also hope the results of this learning phase allow us to improve display and merchandising opportunities to better feature and circulate our collection to customers. Finally, and most importantly, we are excited to be starting the journey of creating a new strategic plan for the library for 2024 to 2028. We are already working with staff at the City of Waterloo to find alignment between the library's work and the strategic priorities of the city. But we also know that there are many challenges, trends, and opportunities in the present context that public libraries are very well positioned to respond to. From providing free, quality programs and spaces for people to work remotely from, to providing access to emergent technologies, skills training to bridge the digital divide, and support for finding good information, libraries are more important than ever. We can't wait to connect with the community and work in collaboration with them to chart an amazing future for WPL. You will notice in the budget tables for the library that much of our need is ongoing costs related to collections and technology updates. These amounts are essential for the library to do its core work. The projects described in my presentation today respond to the need for the library to be agile and responsive to the changing and developing needs of our community. We expect positive outcomes from the result of this engagement work this year. First, by bringing users in to help design the services they want and use, we build relationships and trust with the public, and we ensure our services remain relevant. With the Eastside branch now open, we can bring customers into that space and make engagement and feedback about things like the nature space and the maker space practical, flexible, inclusive, and bring in a wide variety of community members and their perspectives. At the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned the vision we share with the City of Waterloo to have our city lead the world in learning, discovery, and caring. Intentionality in a good strategic plan that listens to the community and responds with great services and spaces means that the community stays engaged with the library. A lifelong relationship with the library means that people stay connected to opportunities for learning through the library resources and programs that we offer. It means they stay connected to opportunities for discovery when they use the emergent technologies we offer and take part in the experiences that we facilitate. And it means that they remain connected to opportunities to be with neighbors through activities and events that build caring and inclusive communities in which people know that they belong. Finally, as you know, all cities are not the same. Local services like libraries that evolve and engage deeply and in long-term ways with the people they serve are uniquely positioned to meet the future needs of their direct communities. Our 2023 business plan highlights the work we are doing to ensure we continue to evolve so that we can meet and exceed the current and future needs of Waterloo. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Turning to council to see if there's any questions. Mayor.
Thanks very much for your presentation, Kelly. It's really great to have you in here and good to hear about some of the upcoming ideas and initiatives that the library has. I'm a huge fan of the libraries in general. I think they really are kind of that great equalizer for communities and society. So thank you so much for all the work you and your staff team do and the volunteers that you work with as well. I think it's makes a tremendous difference in our community and others. My question, I was just wondering, comparable cities of comparable size to Waterloo, Do you have how are we at approximately the same amount of branches that cities of a comparable size? How do we equate?
There are several libraries in several different comparator cities, and they have. I would say that is sort of all over the map, and it depends on kind of the library model that's employed in different spaces. So I would say that we are comparable with the size of Waterloo at this point. I think that the fourth location really brought that up to par. There are cities that have maybe more smaller branch locations in more spaces, but that for the size of the library locations that we have, I think we are comparable.
Okay, great, thank you. And just another question I had was, I know you talked about community engagement and outreach, and I'm just curious, like, given the changing face of our community, how you're actually going about connecting with different, particularly equity-seeking groups in our community, or, newcomers, whether they're students or new families, or, newcomers from other parts of Canada or other parts of the world. How have things kind of changed in terms of your engagement that you do?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think when we do our own planning, we know that, the immigration numbers for Canada in 2025 are 500,000 people. And Waterloo not only receives newcomers, but is also a great source place for people of secondary migration. And so we know that the community is changing, and that has been a really intentional part of our planning in the relationships that we develop. So we know that we create partnerships that help us to reach different segments of the population and bring them into the space. So we work with partners like the Chinese Cultural Association that's helping us to do a Lunar New Year event at Eastside this coming weekend. And so by intentionalizing bringing people into the space and saying, this is your library, this is your community, that part is really important. We also have strategic relationships with things like the KW Multicultural Center to be able to provide library settlement services in the library to newcomers to Canada. So the library is a really neutral space. It's a great place of first landing, and people can come and get settlement support for a range of different needs that they might have. We have dynamic school outreach programs, really intentional about trying to think about who we're not seeing at the library and how we can bring people in, and recognizing there's different strategies to put into place for all of those.
Did you call that a dynamic school? What's that? What was that?
Yeah,
program?
we have a dynamic school outreach program. So we have
okay.
people that intentionally go to schools and talk to students and make sure that everybody knows about the library and what we offer.
Oh, fantastic. And yeah, in the East Side Library, fantastic job on everyone who was involved with designing that. And I just as a small story, I took some friends who were originally from Syria there, some young girls, and they were like it was the first time they'd been in the library, but they were like, and I was saying, oh, you can take this book. And they're like, can I take this book? Can I take that book? And I was like, yeah, you can take that book. And they left just amazed at what was there and how many books they could take. And yeah, it was a really fantastic experience.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Councillor Roach.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. That was excellent. One of the things I picked up at the very end, you talked about the Waterloo Public Library continues to evolve and anticipating and being prepared for future needs of the community. What are the future needs, if any, of the branch in the ward that I represent? And that would be Albert McCormick.
Mm-hmm. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Roach. We have the McCormick Library is near and dear to the people that live in that community, and I think it is a really important part of that facility. It's well used for programs. When we were doing recent look at who lives in McCormick, there is the highest proportion of people that live there are 20 to 29. And so one of the things that gave us pause was do we plan for that as a service group? Because we often think about, newcomers or older adults or children. And so that is part of what we are taking into consideration with our service planning. I also think that being one of the places in Waterloo that has more affordable housing options, there are lots of newcomers, there are lots of people living in multi-generational family situations, there's lots of students and young people. And so thinking about how does that branch and the space and the programs that we offer be able to respond to all of those different groups? And one of the things that that we think about a lot is space. How can people be in that space and have that be a place that they can work from, meet, gather with other families? And so traditionally, much of our response has been to do outdoor programming or programming in the facility space at McCormick. But definitely there is a lot of data that helps us to understand who is in that community and make plans for strategic partnerships. So we often work, for example, with Frontier College, who's able to provide literacy and numeracy programming in that location for the kids in that neighborhood. We also work with the Y to be able to run English conversation circles. So a lot of that data and information about who lives there really informs the programming and services and collections that we have there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's great. Seeing no more questions, I just want to personally thank you and the library board it's been a big 4 years for the library. In addition to doing the whole renovation on the main library for the HVAC system, we got the East Side Library built, and it's just so exciting. I look forward to seeing what comes out of your strategic planning process and yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
So next up on our business plans is the Office of the CAO. And I'll turn it over to Tim Anderson, our Chief Administrative Officer, to bring us up to date on that. And I'm not sure if people are working off a PDF. That's what I'm using as the supporting for this one. Is that? I just didn't know whether you wanted me to identify which page number that the corporate plan was on here, because I think it's the first business plan in the book. So.
All right. Thank you, Chair Freeman, Mayor, and members of council. Yes, it's my pleasure to present the CAO department business plans, and I believe we are on pages 8 to 32 on the website if you're following along on the corporate business plan. That's a thick document. I think it's 190 pages, so we're right near the beginning. And I thought I would start just with a thanks to, there's a lot of finance people in the room here. Just a big shout out to finance overall for preparing us for the 2023 budget and the business plans before us, as well as communications. Tony's team's really relentless at consistency, and you'll see that in our presentations. I'm also joined by Julie Coppicer, who's our financial analyst for the CAO's department, and she's helped really refine our budget for 2023 and a really great asset to our team. Also in the audience, we have Sandy Little, our executive officer executive officer to the CAO. And that's a position, kind of a rotating position that we've had in place for many years at the city. And the intent behind it is career development and succession planning. So Sandy has been in the role for some period of time. With COVID, we've actually had the luck of keeping her for an extended period of time, and does a great job for us in the CAO's office. Justin McFadden is here representing economic development, and Sanjay Govindaraj is here as Director, Indigenous Initiatives, Anti-Racism, Accessibility, and Equity. And many thanks to those team members as well. We're just doing a little bit of a snapshot on our business plan today, but they're more than welcome to take questions from council on the depth of each of these divisions. And just talking about nomenclature for our new councils, we're presenting at the department level. We use the nomenclature of departments, divisions, and then sections. So within some of the areas, we have actually separate sections. For instance, in economic development, arts and culture would be a separate section of that area. So I'm going to follow the same format that Kelly and Mark did last week. We're going to speak around just punctuating some of the strategic initiatives of each of the areas, and then what the community impact is as well. So with the CAO strategic initiatives area, the areas that we wanted to punctuate were the strategic plan development, which council's well aware of. At each term of council, we start out and take an opportunity to work with the community and with council and staff and look at what the next 4 years is going to look like. So next week, actually, council will get a more detailed presentation from our consultant Deloitte on the municipal satisfaction survey assessment. So a really good snapshot of what the community feels about our operation as residents of the community, and help kind of guide where we head with respect to service delivery. As well, we'll take time out next week just to give you a heads up to prepare for this aspect. It's an interactive portion next week with council to hear from you directly on what you heard from the campaign trail. Kind of those key themes are really, really informative to the strategic plan. The Corporate Climate Action Plan, the intent of the plan is to embed greenhouse gas emission reduction measures and considerations into Waterloo's assets, policies, procedures, and corporate culture. The primary purpose of this plan is to map out a detailed and integrated corporate approach to achieve the city's corporate greenhouse gas reduction targets. And those targets, again, 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. And I think I saw Anna Ristic in the audience here. She's our Senior Sustainability Officer. Helps lead this and facilitate it, but it really is all the departments across the city. In terms of community impact, of course, the strategic plan really sets the vision for us. As I said, it sort of looks out the 4 years. What do we want to achieve as a council and a community as we go forward? And it, in turn, sort of aligns our resources. Where do we invest? Where do we put our operating and our capital dollars to work to achieve those goals? Responding to the climate emergency enables a more resilient city, enables a higher quality of life for residents. And council in 2019 declared the climate emergency, and it's really starting to govern our operational approach, and very excited about where we'll head with respect to that. And then finally, advocacy, adaptation, and positioning to mitigate any potential negative impacts on legislative changes. Council's well aware, lots of legislative changes coming at us in many different directions, most recently impacting the IPPW team, but many potential impacts across the corporation. And so being on top of that is really good for us as a corporation and good for the community. Shifting over to Justin's team in economic development, key initiatives, the strategic land development. The city is the owner of some very significant employment land holdings, both on the east side of the city and the west side. As well in Uptown Waterloo. Many of the surface parking lots that you see around Uptown Waterloo are actually city-owned, and really they're intended for future development and intensification. In addition, we have the development implementation of the Business Retention and Expansion program. And this is a program that's been in place for many years, but going through a little bit of a reboot post-COVID, and trying to be again, responsive to the business community and learning about their challenges and opportunities we can assist with as we go forward. And the last one, increased investment in arts and the creative industry. This budget calls for, I believe it's $65,000 in additional funding to help with 38 of our affiliate organizations. And that's a little bit of an inflationary increase should council support that through the budget process. As well, there's some dollars set aside to help with our keynote event, the Lumen Festival, which happens every fall. It's just been an excellent example of a city initiated and delivered program. In terms of community impact, what we've listed here is job growth resulting in New and diversified employment opportunities, again, trying to help the employment sector overall, part of that business retention expansion program. We're very fortunate to be a post-secondary town with 3 institutions and all of the spin-off employment opportunities as a result of that. More affordable housing. Again, what we're getting at there is the leveraged ability of our corporately owned lands and where we can sort of help on the housing affordability front. And then the last one, increased enhanced cultural experiences, are again around quality of life, which is our arts and culture team does just a fantastic job on. And finally, just switching over to our Indigenous initiatives, anti-racism, accessibility, and equity team, led by Sanjay. We've got 2 areas highlighted: the development of a strategy to address reconciliation, anti-racism, equity, and accessibility. And currently, the team is addressing immediate needs in supporting the development of the strategic plan by engaging our equity-deserving groups, undertaking an internal accessibility audit to further remove accessibility barriers, and offering internal staff and council training in EDI, reconciliation, and providing consulting support really for all of the teams across the organization. The team is also piloting interpretation services for improved access to those who do not speak English. And the second one, placekeeping and land opportunities, again, working with our regional colleagues across the region of Waterloo. This is an area of great interest by all of the municipalities. And the intent is these spaces will be Indigenous centered and not intended for the purposes of educating settlers. This work is rooted in relationship building, and it will provide direction and help the city in identifying a wide variety of space needs for land-based programming, ceremonial fire space, gathering, cultural celebration, and organizational administration and indoor facility access. And for community impact for Sanjay's team, we've got really the outcomes being more welcoming, accessible, and an inclusive community. Those are kind of the root of it. Addressing hate and building capacity in the community using a restorative justice approach to enhance a sense of belonging. Again, coming back to that quality of life aspect. And the last point there, making spaces available for ceremonial use and meaningful relationships, built on principles of reconciliation. There's really been an enhanced approach of engagement with the urban Indigenous communities, Six Nations of the Grand, and Mississaugas of the Credit. That is the end of the formal presentation, and myself and my colleagues are available for council's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That's great. And yeah, and thanks for reminding me that all the directors are here, so any questions can be answered by all of the team. So just looking to council to see if there's questions on, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm wondering if you could just give a little bit more information about the pilot interpreting services.
Yes, through you, Chair Freeman. I'll call on Sanjay to take that question.
Through you, Chair. Excellent question. I know when it came to looking at the demographics of how Waterloo has changed, we do realize like there's a lot of requests for people who do not speak English coming in for services. And it ranges from bylaw to community services to everything that the city offers. So what we looked at as a team was to pilot an interpretation services right now. And that is, you can use it on an app or a phone. And it's something that's available quite extensively in the healthcare settings and various other settings. But as a municipality, we would be trying to pilot it across the organization. So this would be from front desks to staff who are out and about in the community.
Thank you. And is that a general app or is that something specific to municipalities?
No, it's a service that this company, which is out of Toronto, which is offering. And we looked at a number of providers and we found this provider quite local, meeting our privacy guidelines, and also our technology requirements.
Excellent. And I'm wondering how long that service pilot has been in operation.
We wanted to have a short test during the elections just to kind of check it out. But we're looking at a different provider for the next couple of years to kind of see how well it works out. But I know we spoke to a bunch of local users like Grand River Hospital and St. Mary's who have been using this provider, and the results have been very positive.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yep. Councillor Wright?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I actually just have a follow-up question about the co-op students as part of the Indigenous Initiatives Anti-Racism, Accessibility, and Equity team. I'm wondering if recruitment will be targeting or be specifically working towards securing participation by co-op students who are Indigenous or from the BIPOC community.
Okay.
Through you, Chair, Brian Hill, who's our Indigenous Initiatives advocate, has reached out to both universities locally to see how we could partner with them to have a regular stream of students coming in from the Indigenous community. We're also looking at with Conestoga College and UW to see other student opportunities in the anti-racism and accessibility work.
Thank you very much.
Mayor McCabe?
Through you, Chair Freeman, and thanks again for the presentation. It's really been interesting to work, pretty closely with some of the people on your team. So I appreciate the work you've done, and that you're going to be doing in 2023. I just had a question, particularly about climate change. When you're referencing working with, I think you said. No, you work, was it 38 partners? Or am I thinking of the library that works with 38 partners? I'm getting the numbers mixed up. My question really is, what are some of the key initiatives you see that we need to work on with our external partners as well as internally with respect to climate change and the climate emergency?
I thank you, through you, Chair Freeman, to the Mayor. Really good question. The 38, just for context, though, that was related to the arts and culture additional funding, but really good question around sustainability. Maybe I'll call on Sandy to take this one. She's really got the background at the tip of her tongue.
Through you, Chair Freeman, to the Mayor. Really great question. I'd like to think that we will need to engage 38 partners because I think we need to have a very cross-community approach. So just in terms of engagement with our partners on the community side, a lot of that will be led by our Senior Sustainability Officer, Anna Ristic, with regards to the work that's happening on the implementation of Transform, our community climate action plan. And so we will be looking to engage more so with partners around the table. Up until now, the collaborative has really just included the area municipalities, but we're moving into this really exciting next stage of work where we'll be engaging with our community partners in multiple sectors. So a lot of the work will happen as part of Transform, but when we're looking internal, we have our corporate climate change adaptation plan, as well as the development of our core cap. So we're looking at how do we engage with divisions across the city. The move of Anna's position up to the CAO's office has really allowed us to have that kind of cross-divisional view of what needs to be done in order to implement the corporate climate change adaptation plan, as well as the development and implementation of core cap. We've established the environmental sustainability team. That's been in place for a couple of years now. I'm losing track of time, but yeah, a couple of years now. And so the environmental sustainability team has membership from across the corporation. It involves senior leadership, it involves staff in various divisions. And so we are engaging with staff in that respect as well. And fortunately, and finally, Anna had a great idea when she first started, and that was how is it best to get to know what the divisions in the city are actually doing? So she has met, I believe, aside from one or two, because we haven't been able to coordinate schedules, she's met with every single division across the city to get a baseline understanding of where we're at in terms of our work and where do we need to go. And also to raise the profile of the work that she's going to be doing and that we're all doing. And so the last piece of all of this is I tried, and we work in a way where we don't want to use a climate lens in terms of establishing our partnerships both outside and inside the corporation. I kind of try not to use the word lens. It's about embedding the work in everything we do. And so we will be doing a lot of work in the coming year and likely in the next few years, just in terms of engaging our community and our corporation in the work that we're doing.
Thank you. That's a very fulsome answer and very thorough. And I mean, it's a key issue, I think, for me personally, but a key reason why I ran. So I really look forward to working with both of you and others across the organization to move some of those initiatives forward. And I just had a question too about arts and culture, to move to that. And I know there's lots of great stuff that happens in Uptown, and Lumen, of course, being one of them, and but lots of activities that happens. I'm just wondering how we balance that with arts and culture across other parts of the community with the 38 organizations.
Yeah. Through you, Chair Freeman, Justin McFadden will take this one. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Councillor Freeman, to the Mayor. We work with a broad base of organizations, across the city and also regionally from a support perspective, investment perspective. A lot of in-kind work that happens sort of behind the scenes with different organizations in the arts and culture space across the city. I guess, unfortunately, kind of what you see visually is a lot of activity in Uptown because we actually manage those spaces, and so we center a lot of our own activities on those spaces. But we do support, community groups kind of around the city. But it is obviously most visible in the spaces that we control and manage. So the square in Uptown, the park, and some of those venue spaces. So, but we do provide support across the city. It's just obviously a little bit less visible. Yep.
Thank you, all of you, for those answers. I appreciate it.
All right, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Chair Freeman. Sorry, Justin, I'm probably going to ask you to stand back up again, but I'd like some more feedback on the increased support for the arts and culture community piece there. I just note in the request, it talks about how there's no mechanism to provide for inflationary increase for affiliated cultural organizations. And so I'm wondering if this is an attempt to as a stopgap to try and solve some of the challenges about that fact, or if there is a longer term plan to look at getting that embedded into our budgets process so that it is inflationary, that we are seeing inflationary increases to support these organizations going forward. Just some feedback on sort of how this ties in and how it may tie into some broader future thoughts on that.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bodley, in terms of kind of what we're outlining on the business plan itself, we sort of see the increase in investment in a number of sort of layers. So one, locally, obviously within the city itself, we're trying to find funding. One of the things that we'll be bringing forward for council's feedback and ultimately some direction will be leveraging the economic development, the community improvement plan funding that we have sort of left over from the broader city-based, citywide COVID CIP. So there'll be some of the recommendations will likely be to direct some of that funding towards the arts and culture space. So that's kind of one piece at the city level. There's also federal lobbying and work that we'll be doing and applications that we'll be putting forward to bring additional funding to the city from the federal level. Celebrate Canada Fund being one of those avenues that we will seek funding from, and there's others at the city level. So those are a couple of different levels. Obviously, provincial as well will be seeking funding. And then thirdly, within the private sector community, working with private sector partners to sponsor, to provide linkages to the arts and culture community for investment and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a multifaceted, multi-leveled piece that we're trying to sort of communicate there in terms of driving increased funding.
Okay, thank you. And as a follow-up through you, Chair Freeman, so this particular request, though, is just to get clarification, this particular request is to get us...
Right-sized for the moment, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep, Mayor McCabe.
I was just going to say, well, Justin's at the stand.
He's not far.
Yes. Just wondered if you, I mean, with the full economic development hat on, not just arts and culture,
Sure.
if you could maybe kind of give us a snapshot of what you see ahead for us in 2023, 2024 in terms of key challenges and opportunities for the work we do to support private industry, regardless of what size they are.
Yeah, so there's a lot. Well, I could go in a lot of different directions with that one. There's a lot of things that we're looking at. Obviously, so if you look at kind of economic development within the region of Waterloo, we tend to focus more at a local level in terms of local economic development, and we work with the Waterloo Region Ecdev Corp on kind of the FDI piece and bringing investment into the city. And then what we do is we sort of provide, make sure the city's competitive, make sure the city's ready to accept that investment. So we try to remove barriers to investment. If we see, we work with our planning department. If we see things that we're getting feedback from the business community to try to make some changes to the zoning bylaw, that sorts of things. And we also listen to the business community and try to make sure that we have, the right tools for investment, the right sort of capacity to accept investment. So affordable housing, for example, is something that wasn't traditionally part of the economic development portfolio, but it is something that we are starting to focus on more because it matters to businesses that they can hire people that can actually afford to live in the city that they're going to be in. So, and then additionally, strategic land development, making sure that there's the capacity for growth within the city. So the West Side Employment Lands will be a big focus for us this year, trying to make sure that we find people to move in there and grow that space. So there's a few pieces to that, but perhaps we'll get a chance to talk a bit more about that as we go forward.
And
Thanks.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say thanks for that summary. I appreciate it.
Sorry. Councillor Hanmer had a question.
Thank you, Chair, through you to the CAO. Tim, what would you say are your biggest risk areas or areas of concern, both from a perspective of if we have to make choices and we can't do something, or even just if we do all the things that you do? What have you identified as risks?
Yeah, through you, Chair Freeman, really, really good question, and thanks for giving it in advance last week so we could prepare a little bit.
I warned you I would ask the question.
Certainly on the revenue front in the CAO's office, we did talk a little bit about this amongst the team members. There's two areas of risk on the revenues, and that's our parking revenues. Part of this budget process actually has us lowering the target of our parking revenue on an annual basis. We do recognize that coming out of COVID, there's less demand on our parking infrastructure uptown. We expect that may creep back up over the course of time, but right now we're proposing a right sizing of that revenue item. And as well, as you heard me speak earlier, those investments in parking lands in uptown, they're ultimately going to be redevelopment locations. So there's a bit of an opportunity at hand as well to accelerate some of the repurposing of those lands. So that's one. And then the other one on the revenue front again was in our department, the municipal accommodation tax, which is a 4% tax put on accommodations throughout the region of Waterloo. We implemented back in 2019 on a region-wide basis. And so there is revenue targets that go toward funding our operating budget in economic development coming from those proceeds. We did see a downturn in COVID-19 and they've slowly crept back up. We think we're in a good forward direction, but you never know with the overall COVID-19 impacts and how long they'll linger. So with that one, again, the controllable aspect is just to carefully monitor it and monitor our expenditure front on that piece too. So yeah, that's what I would offer for the department. And then yeah, corporate wide, on the risk front, probably leading a little bit more into the non-financial areas, is really around talent and talent attraction, talent retention, and our work on that front is really important across all of the teams, including the CAO department area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's it.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions. Oh, no, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, for your presentation and for your staff team. And now I'm going to turn over to the Corporate Services Business Plan and Commissioner Reynolds. And she also will have her supporting team with her that are all listed there, Council, in your agenda.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, Mayor, members of council, staff, and public who may be watching at home. I am Philippa Reynolds, and I'm here to present the Corporate Services Business Plans for 2023. Corporate Services is really the backbone of the organization, and without it, the other frontline operations in the city would grind to a halt in short order. We're the hub of the city's administrative structure, providing professional services and advice to support governance, service delivery, and we make sure that we're abiding by legislation and that our communications are relevant and transparent with the public. This department has the largest number of divisions within the organization at 7, and they are led by the talented directors that you see behind me today. So we have Christina Marina, who is our Director of Legal Services. And we have Julie Finley-Swarren, our Director of Legislated Services. And Tony Ivaroni, our Director of Corporate Communications. Tracy Bell, our Director of Fleet and Procurement Services. And we have Paul Hedinga, our Senior Director of Revenue and Accounting and Treasurer. And we have Max Min, our Director of Information Management Technology Services. And last but not least, we have Kathy Wiedhaus, our Director of Human Resources. I'd also want to thank Brad Witzel and Angela Schneider, Julie Koppeser, and Marcel Emily Humalniku, who have been supporting us throughout the 2023 budget process on the financial planning side of things. And as you know, I am a relatively new commissioner to the role, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the directors and the former Commissioner Olga Smith for their work on developing the business plan initiatives for 2023. And just for context, the department has approximately 115 full-time equivalents and an annual gross operating budget of about $18 million. So starting off with corporate communications, digital services. In 2022, we engaged a leading consultant to develop a digital services strategy for the city, which was designed to go beyond what would be our traditional website refresh and instead look more holistically at the digital services we provide to the community. The strategy is presently being finalized in the coming weeks, and the implementation plan will bring the strategy to life. The focus will be on digital services that deliver the greatest benefit to residents by improving the content design and user experience of the website and other public-facing applications and portals. On the public engagement side, several years ago, Council made a strong commitment to public engagement, and over that time, staff have continually worked to improve its approach with better tools and tactics and training, specifically to make it more meaningful and accessible. And one key example of where this approach is being applied is targeting equity-deserving groups for the new strategic plan development, which is currently underway. On the community impact side, making it easier for residents to do business is certainly the aim of the digital services strategy. And making engagement more inclusive and transparent is certainly of impact to the community. And a recent example of this is the January 10th hybrid public budget session, which we really think is the first of its kind in Waterloo's history. And it's very much incorporated the goals set out in the public engagement initiative that I just described. Moving on to the finance division, key initiatives for 23 include the 3-year budget. I know we haven't finalized the 1-year budget yet, but believe it or not, these things overlap. And we will also be working on refreshing the long-term financial plan and the asset management plan as well. All of these will be worked on throughout 2023. In addition, the Water Portal Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI, interface, Phase 2, will be undertaken in conjunction with City Utilities, IMTS, and Communications. It will add hourly water usage and alerts to the existing portal. In terms of the impact on community of these initiatives, obviously delivering meaningful public engagement on the various financial plans will have impact to the residents in terms of their awareness and their understanding and their ability to provide feedback to council and other stakeholders to make decisions in the near future. Also providing enhanced customer service, of course, through the portal so that residents can have a better line of sight to their water usage and manage it more effectively. For the Fleet and Procurement Division, initiatives include implementing and maintaining the social procurement program. In addition to procurement being a necessary task, it's also an opportunity to provide social value to the community by asking suppliers, as part of their evaluation, how they will give back. Supporting major capital infrastructure projects throughout the organization, of course, including creating contracts and supporting supplier performance management tracking. And finally, research and reassessing the Green Fleet Initiatives piece. And so these 3 initiatives will be key in that division, how they impact the community. Obviously, the diversification of suppliers working with the city is good, and increased social benefits as a result of adding the social contribution evaluation factor to the request for proposals provides that greater diversification. Another benefit will be the greenhouse gas reduction of green fleet initiatives through the ongoing data collection that will inform needs, vehicle right sizing, and where financially and technically feasible, replacing equipment when it comes due for replacement with an alternative fuel version. Moving on to the Human Resources Division, people are key to everything that the City of Waterloo does. So for the Human Resources Division, their initiatives include employee development, ongoing employee development, which happens at all levels and starts with the employee's very first day of work and continues throughout their career, is very critical. Continually updating the employee development program is needed so that employees have the necessary and legislated training required for their specific jobs, so that corporate training sessions for leaders and aspiring leaders are offered. Opportunities for growth, such as the job shadowing and mentorship program, are developed, and so that support for ongoing professional development inside and outside the organization occurs. And policy review. This is a long-term project that entails the ongoing review of policies to update them to comply with changing legislation, changing practices that we have internally, and from a diversity, equity, and inclusive lens as well. And the community impact of these are that staff would have the training needed and that the policies reflect changing times so that staff can deliver services effectively to constituents. Through the lifelong learning, the city positions itself to attract and retain quality and talented employees to deliver the services that constituents expect. In regards to information management and technology, and their 2023 initiatives. We have adopting the Microsoft Azure cloud to achieve business outcomes and continue the city's journey through cloud-supported computing. And we also have adding a data visualization and an analysis tool to allow divisions to develop meaningful reports with minimal to no coding needed. As far as the community impact here, of course, I'm just looking at my notes here. The city continues to rely more and more on cloud computing, and so understanding how that affects the ultimate services that we provide through the organization to constituents. And the business intelligence tools that I mentioned will improve the quality of data and the efficiency of data in order to continue to provide good service delivery. From a legal services division perspective, key initiatives for 2023 include the review of the site plan process and agreement template, participating in Lean Six Sigma review of the official plan amendments and zone change application processes, assisting divisions in implementing recommendations in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, and assisting other divisions in facilitating affordable housing. As far as community impact, improvements in the planning and development process and the OP amendments and zone applications obviously plays a very important role in adding additional housing units to the community. And the city is committed to addressing the recommendations in the Truth and Reconciliation report and strengthen relationships with Indigenous peoples. Legislated services, last but certainly not least, key initiatives for 2023 include a review of the Committee of Councils in that process. And so this is to ensure that the objectives of the committees align with the goals of the strategic plan, which Council is currently developing. And in addition, a review of the recruitment process to reduce barriers to diverse representation and encourage applicants that are more reflective of our diverse population to be involved, and identify ways to create a safe space for ongoing engagement within our committees. Another initiative comes with the start of every new council term, where council receive orientation and education and training. And this program will vary certainly from election to election, depending on the amount of new members of council, but core to every training program is providing council with the information and tools needed to carry out duties, including understanding legal responsibilities, setting policy and service levels, being the governors of the organization, accountability and transparency, and maintaining the financial integrity of the municipality. As far as the community impact for these initiatives, committees of council obviously reflecting the diversity of the community, so that advice provided by the committees and decisions that are made by the committees of council are shaped by those diverse representations. And strong orientation and transition tools for council, so that they're in a foundation of good governance and strategic leadership, which obviously directly impacts the community through council's decision making. And that concludes my presentation, and now myself and the directors are available to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I just turn to council for questions. Okay, Councillor Hamner.
Thank you very much. Through you to the commissioner. I have two questions actually, and just a curiosity with legal services and the Lean Six Sigma approach to the official plan. I'm presuming that it is to look at how we can improve efficiencies as also a result of the changes in legislation that we are facing, and I'm just curious how that's going to transpire and what's involved.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer, for your question. I think I'm going to pass this over to Christina to answer. Come on up, Christina.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Hamner. That's an excellent question. And with all the bills that have come through and all the changes that are happening, it was this was done pre all of the bills, so it just comes in line with it, but we're looking probably to expand the team also just to get capacity to be varying it a little bit further, but we were just going to have to look at the site plan templates and everything and just sort of streamline everything so that we meet and we comply with all of the bills.
Okay. I think it's a great initiative to undertake, but as I was reading through it and thinking all the changes that are still happening with the legislative pieces, how much of the work we're doing, we need to build into the process just the adaptability we may need to have.
It will be, and it will be scoped to varying it to streamline to have a bit more flow to it, if that makes any sense. And legal services is going to play a crucial role in that, in just ensuring that the timelines are met and that everything proceeds a little bit faster than it would have done.
So is it fair to presume that legal services is really taking the lead, or is IPPW taking the lead with the reviewer combination?
I can see Commissioner Ron looking, so I'm just going to pass it over to him and let him.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Through you, Councillor Freeman and Councillor Hamner, excellent question. And as Christina said, the Lean Six Sigma work was done previously in large part, but it's still very much relevant because we want to go back now with Bill 23 and benchmark the changes against what was done before. But to your point, the 10-point adaptation plan that Council approved in December of last year is full steam ahead. We've actually retained some consulting expertise to help us look at our staffing complement, look at streamlining, as Christina said. But as part of this, we have to stay on the right side of the legislation. So that's where Christina and her team come in to make sure that what we propose in terms of efficiencies and changes are also going to meet the requirements of the new legislation.
Okay. Thank you both for that. Chair, if I could, one more question to the Commissioner, please. And it's the risk question. Please, can you share with us where you think our greatest areas of vulnerability or risk are with what's coming through from your area?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Handler. Through you, Chair Freeman. So CAO Anderson stole one of mine, which was talent attraction and recruitment and attraction, and retention. But certainly that is a very important piece for the corporate services team, and certainly an area of focus for Kathy as our director of HR and her team. So looking for opportunities, to continue to support the HR team, to make sure that they have the resources that they need to support all of the other employees, and looking at our compensation models where needed, both monetary and non-monetary. So a few things there. The world of communications continues to evolve, and as we continue to move away from sort of traditional media, that's certainly an area of interest for Tony and his team as well, because there's no singular way of reaching people. And so, continuing to listen to what people are saying, and recently through some information we've received that I think is coming forward to council next week, we're hearing more and more that people want to be directly communicated with, things like emails, and so subscribing to newsletters and subscribing to our website is actually gaining more and more traction, because of that there's so many channels for communication that it is very difficult. So I'd say that's another area, and then perhaps one more would be more on the technology side, privacy of information, ensuring that as all organizations in the world continue to face cyber threats, that we are prepared, to the extent possible to manage those. And so, for example, in our capital budget, IMTS does have a capital budget there with funding requests to, and continue to deal with cybersecurity. So those are some of the risk areas for corporate services.
Thank you very much. I was waiting for you to say the cybersecurity. I thought it might have been one of your first ones, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bassick.
Thanks, through you, Chair Freeman. One question about talent attraction and retention, and specifically in in employee development and thinking about the pandemic. So, are you, as part of your work, will you be looking at and asking staff about how the pandemic continues potentially to affect their work, if it does, how their sort of personal life, I mean, without digging into details, but how their experiences interact with work and how the organization can support them, but specifically with a lens to COVID and the pandemic and how that has and continues to affect people?
So through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Basak, can I ask Kathy to come up on that one, Kathy?
Through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Basak. There's a few things that we're doing to do that. We're looking at enhancing our wellness program across the board, recognizing that there is still residual things that we're dealing with out of the pandemic, and learning of what it's like to live in the endemic, and how does that affect our jobs? How does that affect things that are outside of our job, and how do we support staff with that? We also have ongoing open conversations with our unions and associations about supports that their employees are looking for. We track different patterns and things that we see with respect to absences. We track our benefits usage to see things like the mental health usage. We've implemented additional programs that we continue to track usage of as well with respect to wellness initiatives. So we do have very open environments in several different areas where we would attempt to look for that information from employees for sure. We did do the surveys through the WorkWell, YMCA WorkWell surveys, and we could be looking at doing another update on that and seeing how things are going now that we've implemented some of the outcomes from those surveys as well.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like it is, definitely part of a program. And I just wanted to point out one thing you said about the mental health benefits. And so I'm just going to make it real personal, because I can't speak for anybody else about this, but we did receive increased benefits last year, including on council, we get benefits. I couldn't use them. My life was so chaotic last year. I tried and I couldn't. And so sometimes like those things aren't going to reflect it. So, and I know that's just one data point and that you're doing multiple other things, but I'm really glad to hear about the open conversations with the associations, because, when we talk about wellness programs, those are really individually focused, and those are nice to have, but they don't change the potential systemic problems that exist within organizations. So I feel like through the associations potentially and the unions, we might get sort of that like arm's length. So I guess my focus really here is I'm hoping that through all the requests that you make through the budget, that we're looking at the systemic barriers that prevent different demographics of the organization from being able to fully realize their potential at the organization. So just mostly a comment, but thank you for my better understanding too now.
Thank you, Councillor Basak.
Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Freeman, and to you, Commissioner Reynolds. I was curious about the bullet point that said you're reassessing the electrification of fleet and what that meant or what that might mean. Are you looking at expanding the amount of electrified vehicles, or what does that actually mean and look like?
Through you, Councillor Freeman, to Mayor McCabe. In the last year, we've increased our telematics across fleet to give us some data. So when you look at our fleet, 67% of our fleet, there are no viable zero emission options. So we have to look at reducing emissions in other ways. And that's through looking at utilization records, looking at right sizing. Is the vehicle we're using too big for the job? That type of work. For the remaining portion of the fleet, we're always looking for opportunity for zero emission vehicles. Right now we're at about 8% of those vehicles are zero emission. We have 4 pickup trucks on order. When they're going to arrive, we have no idea. Supply is quite an issue. Availability is quite an issue. And then there's the infrastructure needed. So we can only purchase zero emission vehicles in in a planned method, because we have to have appropriate charging stations for them. So it's something we're always looking at. And as vehicles reach their end of their useful life, we look at options, we look at needs, and we look at what we have available.
Thank you. You answered my second question, and with that was if we had the infrastructure to support it. So thank you. That sounds, I guess continue to do the best you can with the supply chain that we have, right?
Yes, it's challenging.
Yeah, thank you. And if I could, just another question. I was curious about the procurement. So, was that you as well? Okay. When it said about diversification, what does that look like, and what are you thinking? And partly what I'm wondering is about like the city's ability to use local, buy local, shop local, and support some of our local either entrepreneurs or established businesses that are here.
So we do have, sorry, through you, Councillor Freeman. We do have some legislative requirements we have to follow. So in lower cost procurements, we're open and we're able to buy local. Procurements over a certain threshold are subject to a number of trade agreements, and we're not able to just pick and choose local. So what our long-term vision is for the social procurement aspect is twofold. It's to empower the suppliers that we deal with a lot, and especially in a lot of the higher ones, to perhaps earn points by utilizing services of equity deserving groups, or if they're a certified diverse supplier, part of that would be part of their evaluation. So they may get more points to help with award. On the other side is we want to do some outreach to find out the suppliers that are in our community, what they provide, what are the roadblocks right now? Do they find the procurement process a little bit too cumbersome? Do they not want to pay the bids and tenders fee because they don't feel the reward is enough? And to look at opportunities for those lower cost purchases to maybe have source lists that people can join onto that we could award directly from, things like that.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah, I was emailing with Filippo over the weekend with some questions I have about that based on some conversations I've had with some other local groups too who are working on some of those kind of things. So look forward to chatting with you about that at some point. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you.
Just wasn't sure if you had another question. Any other questions, Council? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure there'll be lots more questions once we dig deeper into the budget lines. And I did want to point out to Council, I gather this is intuitive, but for example, on page 111 on fleet and procurement, you'll see that there's listed numbers B13-P, and those will take you to the sheets where the actual write-up is on that budget line. So now we're going to move on to staff reports. And the first one is the Waterloo Park Circuit Phase 1 Award with Kelly Harrington. And I'm not sure, is there a presentation or is this here for questions? There is a presentation? All right, great. There's not a presentation. Andrea says there's not a presentation. Did any member of council have a question on this? Okay, seeing none, I think there's a recommendation here for us to move. I need a mover. Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. The next one is recruitment policy. And is there a presentation on this one? No. So it's here for your consideration, Council. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, can I look for a mover? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That's also carried unanimously. At this point, we will recess and reconvene at 6:30 this evening. I'll look forward to seeing you at that time.